You're listening to the Manifest Your Greatness podcast, and this is episode number 58. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Manifest Your Greatness program. I am so honored to have Brittany Zimmerman as our guest today. Brittany is the founder of Yummet. Is the founder of Yummet. I say Yume, I have to just one quick segue on this is I speak Japanese and Yume means dream. And when I think of your company, I think of dreams. So that
Oh,
apologies for the mistake. But before founding Yume, Brittany served as a NASA principal investigator and aerospace systems engineer, developing life support systems for long duration space flight and habitation. She has committed herself and her company to bettering the conditions of humanity and is implementing her multidisciplinary expertise of space systems to make life support technologies easily accessible and affordable for terrestrial humanity. Brittany holds an MS in space studies with a focus on bioregenerative, physical, chemical, environmental control, and life support systems for long duration human spaceflight. Ms. Zimmerman has been repeatedly recognized for all of her innovations and leadership. And just a few of these accolades, over 95% proposal selection for over $85 million in awards. She is a Society of Satellite Professionals International award recipient. She's also SSPI 20 under 35 award recipient, 3 times NASA Principal Investigator. Technologies she's also been selected to be involved in are the International Space Station, Artemis Program, and Department of Defense. She's also a Future Space Leader awardee, and she has been an analog astronaut in the Inflatable Lunar and Martian Habitat uh, project, as well as the Mars Desert Research Station, Mission 171 to be specific. So I am just so thrilled to have Brittany with us here today. She's extremely busy. She's involved in so many wonderful things, and I'm very, very just grateful that you've taken the time to join us here today.
awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Curtis. I'm excited to be here. So I know it's been long in the making. So glad the time has arrived.
Yes, yes, yes. Something we've been trying to make happen for quite a while. So yeah, I just wanted to uh, maybe give you a little bit of a chance to kind of explain a little bit about the origin of Yame. And like I was saying before, I'm sorry for butchering the name because when I think of the company, I mean, it speaks to me as a dream. It sounds so wonderful, all the things you're doing. So that's how I remembered it, obviously with the with the wrong pronunciation. But where did that come from? The
The
name?
name? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, gosh. So originally I was working on solutions for how to take closed loop environmental systems for living on Mars, right? Our habitats. And we work on building different greenhouse modules and systems. And we have a problem, right? We had a problem, I should say, where we would have part of our plants that are edible and part of our plants that are inedible to humans, right? So this is an important thing for us to figure out how to deal with, right? When we're in a closed loop system. So I started looking at how do we take that inedible portion of the plant and translate that into something useful and meaningful, right? How do we really recycle that? And of course, we've looked at composting and a bunch of other incineration practices. But ultimately, what I ended up really honing in on was the use of grubs and fungi to break down that inedible biomass because it would in turn extract the nutrients that was still inherent, right, in the biomass itself and turn it into something that was actually edible to our spacefarers. So, right, we can eat crickets and grubs and worms. We can eat most types of fungi, right, things along those lines. So I worked on a system that did that. Our Western Hemispherian astronauts were not all about eating the grubs, as it turns out. Our Eastern Hemispherian astronauts were way more, I would say, used to doing that, right? So that was something they were more comfortable with. And so the nutrients, both your macro and micronutrients, are really fantastic in being able to do that. However, I think there's a psychological thing for us over here to kind of get over to be able to take that in. So I started coming up with a way to take those and combine them and turn them into essentially like a small little patty looking thing. So it didn't look like fungi and bugs, right? And so that you could actually consume it. So we were actually just working on closing that system, right? In terms of our nutrient cycles there and our conveyor systems. So I came up with the term Yummet. You can say Yummet. Half of the people on the team do. So you're not wrong, Curtis. Um, and for us, it was really more of a how to inspire trust in the fact that, it's a nutrient-based product. It's really good for our health to consume, even though psychologically it's coming from something that's kind of hard to overcome, right? And so water technologies, I thought fit really well with that also. We were taking dirty sources of water, right? Black waters and gray waters, and turning that into potable, clean drinking waters. And then finally, this climate solution and waste into viable product solution kind of fit under that same umbrella, where it's we're taking dirty air and we're making it breathable. Please trust that that is a good thing for our body, even though it's coming from a polluted source. And likewise with the water and the materials that we make out of the back end of the system. So Yumei was made up. It was not a real word. I felt like it inspired just this feeling of like gourmet and delicious and safe for us sort of emotion. So it was also available as a 6-letter domain, and so it became.
That's
Yeah.
that's a great origin story for the name. That's now I will never get it wrong again.
Okay, okay. But I like
Awesome.
you, May. I've been thinking of I thought it was really good for marketing. It's like giving permission. So I really like you, May, because yeah, you may live a better life. You may do a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. It
It's
definitely
good.
fits. It definitely fits well. It definitely does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so before Yame, you were in the aerospace industry, and I had remembered there was another interview that you had available on the website at one time that talked a little bit about your experience there and kind of what happened and why you decided to make a shift. And one of the things that I really like to share with the followers and listeners and people who tune into the program is a little bit about the why of our guests, because I have a feeling that there's so many how-to books out there. Everybody could pick up a book and figure out how to do something, but for some reason, of course, the formulas only work as is for certain people, and everybody has to kind of find their own way, and something has to drive them to make
Yeah.
those changes. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your experience there.
Yeah, for sure. How far back you want me to go? Where do you want me to start, Curtis?
Wherever you would like to go.
Okay. Right. So yeah, as you mentioned, I did start in the aerospace industry. So designed aircraft for a long time. NASA stole me out of the aerospace industry and moved me into the outer space sector. I originally was there um, designing greenhouse modules, actually up in North Dakota. So I was looking at how to build a greenhouse module actually for the inflatable lunar Martian habitat at the time. And I loved it. It was extremely synergistic with my graduate focus, right? So more of that bioregenerative physiochemical hybrid life support systems for long duration space flight, and that's really bridging that gap between nature-based solutions and more traditional engineering approaches, right? Rotating machinery, chemical reactions, and things along those lines. So for me, being able to innovate at the intersection of those two was really thrilling, right? It's like, how do we leverage the benefit of both types of these architectures to keep us in space for long periods of time? And that was fantastic. It was a really great launching point for me in my career. I ended up inventing a whole suite of different technologies. Some of those technologies landed me as the youngest NASA principal investigator ever. And I leveraged the heck out of that to start bringing in large amounts of funding and leading teams through the development of technologies from an initial idea or concept through the full maturation cycle. How do we do that? Integrated and commercialized and flying in space. And so That was very fruitful for me. I did that for a great deal of time. I've got, patents and or technologies on the International Space Station, right, on the Artemis program, as you mentioned, um, private spacecrafts, uh, designed habitats that are slated for some of our first visits to some celestial bodies for the Department of Defense. Um, but my big shift, right, and I think that's kind of what you were alluding to there, Curtis, happened in late 2019 for me. Um, I lost a very good friend of mine in Panama, and she contracted a waterborne illness that ended up being fatal. And it really started making me rethink the way that I thought. And so it was a big turning point for me. And the idea that I'd been working on, right, technologies that could extract water from feces and make it fully potable again. And we have all of these technologies that are super advanced for our spacefarers, but she didn't have access to clean enough water to keep her own life, right? I was in her home with a laptop that could do amazing things and provide water to people on this planet and others, right? But she didn't have access to clean enough water continuously to keep her own life. And I just started getting this overwhelming feeling like my head was a little too far in the clouds and that a bridge needed to be made to kind of get my feet back on the ground and not only develop the technologies that were important for celestial life support, but then also how do we commercialize those technologies in a way that makes sense for terrestrial human betterment here on our own planet. And also running some air revitalization programs. So I was looking at how do we bring a very large amount of people to live on the Martian surface and this partial pressure of CO2 up there, or actually the percentage of carbon dioxide that makes up the atmosphere of Mars is 95%. So it's a greenhouse gas planet. And so as we're developing the technologies that translate that into meaningful things for our spacefarers, and with the loss of my friend, is just this bubbling up inside of me of really wanting to mature this process of taking these technologies that are so valuable for our spacefarers, but at the end of the day, not that many people get the privilege of traveling in space, right? There's very few people who get to do that. And if we could take those technologies and bridge that gap and develop them for Earth applications here, then the impact could be so much greater. And all the hard work, I would say in the development and the maturation, all of the R&D process through commercialization, all that's already done over here for this sector. I felt like the bridge wasn't a hard one to make, and I needed to do that. And so started running in that direction, right? I was being groomed as the CEO of a large private space organization. We just didn't see eye to eye on a couple of different things, primarily in terms of maturing this terrestrial part of what I thought was very important. And I ended up stepping away from the industry and working on being that bridge and developing that. And it was really exciting, for us. We had, I was working and managing teams with NASA, at Boeing, two different university departments that I was helping develop space hardware with, and I had three public-private partnerships that were ongoing, and all these people came forward and said, "We're coming with you." And I guess that's really our origin story, because that's when we founded Yummet and really hit the ground running and been working on, developing some really cool solutions. I might be biased, of course, but I think they're really cool solutions.
I think a
Um,
lot of people think they're cool.
okay, yeah, yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. And yeah, so we
Yeah.
piloted our solutions and now we're working on building it up at a commercial scale here on the island of Hawaii right now. And so I've been working really closely with the county, the mayor's office, the department heads, and the state to get some of these solutions up and running. And yeah, so we take in waste, right, in terms of greenhouse gases. Both atmospherically and oceanically. We bring in waste from landfills, anything with carbon in it. So even metals, plastics, gases, ag waste, sludges, construction waste, demolition concrete, anything like that is really fair game for us. And we bring that in, we break those carbon chains down and we put them back together in a way that mirrors Mother Nature, right? It's biomimicry at the heart of it. It's how do we look at Mother Nature for inspiration in the directions we want to go because she does things so beautifully already.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we'll never hold a stick to what she can do. But we can at least utilize that as inspiration and try to move in the right direction. And that's really what we've done here is we've looked at how waste, moves through Mother Nature's processes. And Mother Nature takes waste and breaks it down into minerals, into soils, into atmosphere, and into water, which are all wonderful things, right? That are highly needed. And so that's what we do too. We've really taken a chapter from her and we make a mineral, we have some net negative concrete. So
Oh,
for every ton of it we make, we actually remove about a ton of greenhouse gases from the environment. So it's super cool, entirely made from waste, nothing imported, no release of any greenhouse gases, obviously, and the mechanical properties are way better than traditional ordinary Portland cement-based products. So it's been really cool. We've gotten a lot of attention there. I've been working with some of the DOTs and some folks from the American Concrete Institution, and it's a huge breakthrough in the materials industry. So yeah, we're excited about that. We also make a biochar material. You know what biochar is, Curtis?
that's like a substitute for fertilizer, is it?
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
my
it's
homework.
a that's so good. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a sustainable soil amendment product, right? So something that right we've over-tilled our lands and right we do a lot of monocropping. We utilize a ridiculous amount of synthetic fertilizers right now, and this actually helps restore some of the carbon structure. Adds a lot of surface area. It has macro and micropores, and really helps for the proliferation of microbes. That are very healthy for the soils. It helps with drought resistance. It actually can hold water in the substrate, which is really cool. Not in a puddle, right? So it's not inducing root rot, but it's the rain comes down or your irrigation comes down or whatever it happens to be. It's kind of like a sponge. It'll hold that water for a period of time, and then when the roots need it, it's still available instead of our, you know, typical move all the way through the substrate and it's gone
Right.
scenario. So that's really how it helps in the drought resistant side of things. And then it's also a scrubber. So it actually immobilizes heavy toxins and things along
Oh,
those lines, which is really cool. So
yeah.
you can apply it to places that have used a lot of pesticides or, have major, chemical profiles on them for whatever reason. Who knows what industries were there before, or heavy amounts of synthetic fertilizers are being used or currently are still used, and it really immobilizes them to stay on that property so that as it rains, it doesn't become part of the runoff. So we don't
Right.
have the major issues that we see, right, with the death of our reefs. And then also it helps with groundwater pollution. So all those things don't actually end up in the clean drinking water supplies and aquifers and things along those lines. So it's really cool stuff. And we didn't invent it. Indigenous groups have been utilizing it for, oh my, 6,000 years, I think, on record, probably longer than that. That's just
Wow.
how long, I think dates back to when we've found it.
Yeah.
Um, and then we make water, right? The lifeblood of everything. Yeah, yeah. And so we make a clean, potable drinking water in the system. We can do desalination as sea levels rise. For a lot of island implementation, the Middle East is very interested in that because they don't have access, right, to fresh water without desalination.
Right.
Traditionally, a caustic brine is actually produced in that, and they dump it back into the ocean, and so they're wreaking havoc. So this is a really big breakthrough for being able to desalinate in those parts of the world where it's necessary, but without the ecological devastation because there's no waste stream. We also do wastewater treatment. So, brown water, brown water, I think sometimes it's brown, black waters and gray waters and things along those lines that I think need help in a lot of places. Even here, on Hawaii Island, we're still taking the effluent from our wastewater treatment facilities and injecting them about 3/4 of a mile off the shore right now. So
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
that things are being done. And so it's really meant to help with a lot of that. And then finally, we make green hydrogen. So a byproduct of the system is a very, very pure form of hydrogen. It's 99.999. How many nines did I say? 98? Okay, yeah, something along those lines. Um, and really that's meant as a sustainable alternative to fossil fuels right now. So it's pretty cool stuff. And
Oh.
yeah, that's what we're working on.
Yeah, that is a lot of cool stuff. And I'll when we met actually in Kona, and this is another reason it's just been exciting for me to have the opportunity to do this is because it's happening here where we are on the Big
Yeah.
Island of Hawaii. But yeah, we met in Kona and we were talking
Mhm.
about some of this at a very high level. And just I was amazed it was happening here, and I was wondering, like, if you could share a little bit about how did the Big Island of Hawaii become the place where all of this is being
Yeah.
done? Yeah,
Yeah, that is a question. When we started working on all this, it wasn't in Hawaii. It wasn't, I hadn't even thought about, the possibility that we would be here. So that really wasn't on the radar yet, right? So when we piloted our facilities and stuff, we were doing that in, large cities in the continental United States. And once we realized just how effective and how transformational the technologies really were, we got to the point where everybody on the team, my team's in more than 50 countries, everybody had these beautiful reasons why we needed to develop it in their country first. Like first full scale operation has to be here because air
yeah,
quality issues, water quality issues, agricultural issues, access to energy issues. Like everybody's around the world are having some of these really big existential issues. And I just felt like there was so much need and there was so much passion in all of the teammates about, being motivated to having me select their country that I felt like there was going to be a lot of broken hearts regardless of the decision that was made. And I felt like that had the potential of really fracturing the team in a lot of ways. I didn't want anybody to feel like their location and the efforts that they'd put in and the struggles that their people are facing were less important than somebody else's. And so I had to sit down and think, how do we make this decision fairly? Because it's an extremely important decision. And so I went back to the team and I said, let's make it a data-driven decision instead. Why don't we work together and we'll build up a tool, and that tool will reflect our values, our ethics, the things that are important to us. And that way we know that our individual biases for our specific countries are not built into that. And instead, we will look at where, you know, our tool prioritizes things. And we agree to stay together as a team because we know we're going to do it in the order where the most good is going to be done. So we thought about it and we liked that approach. And then we started working on building that tool and pulled together a GIS package, right? We mapped the flow. We were looking at different layers on that, and we paired that with a decision down select matrix tool. We're looking at things like what's the socioeconomic impact of developing the technology, right? We're looking at things like where is the cost of energy very high, right? Where are climate impacts worsening faster, right, than in other places? We looked at where were soils that had previously been very fertile been depleted, right? Where are water poisoning issues, building up? Where are waste management solutions failing communities, so on and so forth. So we built in all of the things that we felt were really important. We shook hands. We decided we really, that the tool really reflected our values, and we ran the tool. And when we first saw the results, we legitimately thought the tool was broken, Curtis. I mean, we were like, okay, there's no way that that's correct. So we dove in and we tried to figure out where the math was wrong. But the math wasn't wrong. The way that we were thinking about the world was wrong, right? And the top 70 something locations were all islands.
hmm,
And we're like, there's no way, right? We think of islands as these like green eco spaces, I think because marketing dictates that we believe that, right? And
right.
so you think of these as already like relatively closed systems that have been self-sufficient for long periods of time. And when you start diving into it, you recognize that unfortunately that's not the way that, the infrastructure and the islands are operating anymore, right? And that sort of view of how islands were is not exactly how islands are, right? They're
Right.
almost more like isolated cruise ships where a lot of stuff has to get imported and everything gets exported, and
Yeah.
and there's a lot of non-self-reliancy right now on those imports. And so it's been it was pretty interesting, going through that mind shift. And so, yeah, we were looking at the top few locations. We had a few people on the team who grew up in Hawaii, and they were like, look, we told you this would be such a good spot. And I was like, all right, I'm eating my words now. Um, because I never thought we would end up on a, volcanic structure in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, super far away from everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but the tool said so, and we had agreed that we would implement in a way that made sense, that followed, the foundations and principles that we believe in. And so, yeah, we decided to come check out Hawaii, spend 30 days on Oahu, 30 days on a big island, 30 days on Maui, 30 days on Kauai. And yeah, I spent 30 days in Oahu, and now I'm on my 10th month here on
Wow.
Big Island. So yeah, no, it's been really good though. I mean, I got the fantastic fortune of meeting Mayor Mitch Roth when I first got here, and he is really passionate about the sustainability of the island. And he was one of the first folks I talked to who, you know, we talked and those words turned into action very quickly thereafter. We met, I think, at a Chamber of Commerce event, and the very next week I was meeting with the department heads, and we were sitting down and saying, what does it take, to
Mhm.
make this a reality for the county? And so yeah, we've just had a lot of momentum. There's a thread, and we're still
Yeah.
pulling on that thread. And yeah, we it's been really fantastic. We are, I think, one of our big obstacles, right? That's something I think we wanted to chat about too, was that right now there's a lot of contracts in place for the waste to go to landfill. Those are forever style contracts, and I was just really hoping that there is a political will to do something more sustainable with the waste. And I've been watching that very closely. And the county council just this last week actually passed a resolution um, saying that the island is interested in diverting the waste to sustainable processes. So we were really excited about that. And yeah, it just gives me a lot of hope, for the
Yeah.
direction that things are going. Yeah.
Yeah. So now in 2023, what is kind of like the biggest project that you're involved in at this point, or yeah, what's taking up the most focus you think right now?
Oh, it's definitely this Hawaii County facility that we're looking at. We're looking at how do we process the waste for the island into, right, these sustainable products in ways that are not negative. The big thing for us is making, right, Hawaii Island net negative. So how do we make Hawaii Island remove more carbon dioxide from the environment than it emits, remove more greenhouses from the environment than it emits? And yeah, those are kind of the scales that we're looking at, the projects we're looking at. We also just got inducted into the Hawaii State Energy Office's hydrogen hub. So looking at some of the potentials of building up some similar solutions for some of the other islands. But yeah, we're pretty far down the road here with the County of Hawaii, and really hoping that um, this really wins out for, yeah,
Yeah.
for the first scale operation. Yeah, it gets implemented. So,
Yeah, and you've got like over 32 countries involved and over 100 individuals with all kinds of qualifications
oh,
all
more
pulling
than that.
together.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Over 50 countries and over
Wow.
300
That
people.
number keeps going up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It's
That's great. That's great.
and we get back to the why, right? And I think you
Yeah.
asked that before. It's like, how do those numbers keep going up, right? What is happening, right? there's just this gravity associated with these sorts of impactful projects, right? We have this doom and gloom thing going on around the world right now, right? And I think it is devastational. I mean, I really do, right?
Yeah.
Even if it is the state of the world around us, to sit there and kind of stew in,
Hmm.
this negativity, I feel like it's devastational to the next generation, as we look at, man, like there's solutions we need to come up with. Like there's progress that needs to be made. But when you frame a problem as insurmountable, you're really removing that will from people right out of the gates, right? To
Right.
even want to tackle it. It's like, why even try?
Yeah.
Why would I waste my life doing that if it's not even feasible or possible?
Right.
And so I think what a project, an organization like this really provides is that light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
the hope, the knowledge, that there are solutions that are possible. And the big thing here is, wow, if they're doing it in these industries, I really hope that breeds innovation in the other industries and in the next generation because they're like, oh, well, if it's doable there, it's got to be doable over here with this other thing that I know a whole bunch about, right? That,
Right.
is a different solution and complementary and good for the world. And as you look at projects like that, right? And I think we touched on this, right? In our earlier conversation, Curtis, and it was just, man, when I was in the space industry, I just feel like I was doing meaningful work, right? I thought,
Hmm.
oh, I'm pushing the frontier of science and our understanding of humanity and where we came from and the universe around us. And I just loved that. It really was exciting for me. It was thrilling for me. But I think with the loss of my friend and kind of this reframing, right?
Hmm.
My idea of what was meaningful is really what started to change
Yeah.
inside of me, right? And so it was kind of like oh man, I have a positive impact on these folks, on this community, on these industries. But the problems that we're facing right now in terms of carbon imbalance is something I think we haven't really seen before in,
Hmm.
in our species. It's like we have overcome some insane things, right? And they have massive impacts on on humanity. I mean, war, it's atrocious, right? We see large amounts of loss of life, but it's really country specific, right? It's the countries that go to war that are really facing those, right? And the countries that are not engaged in that war, don't see that. Maybe it's access to water and food, right? We see
Right.
loss of life at very, very large amounts because of not having access to those resources.
Yeah.
But that's not really being faced by everybody. That's really the people who are on the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, right?
Right.
It's the
Right.
people who don't have that, right? Our wealthy humans are not facing issues to access to food and water. So
Hmm.
everybody's not facing that, even with disease and genetics. Like it's all very, you know,
Hmm.
not specialized or localized, but it's not affecting everybody,
Hmm.
right? It might have a
Yeah.
secondary or ancillary impact, of course, but this is the first thing that I can think of. And I'm not saying there isn't other things, I'm just saying it's the
Hmm.
one that I can think of
Yeah.
where we are inhaling twice as much, approximately twice as much carbon dioxide in every single breath than the last 800,000 years of data showed us, you know,
Hmm.
we're literally evolving through.
Right.
So we don't know what the long-term impacts of that are. We just don't. We know
Yeah.
CO2 is a toxin and we're
Yeah.
breathing right now twice as much, right? And
Mhm.
that's consistently and quickly moving up. So I've developed spacesuits and spacecraft. I understand what the issues with CO2 is, and I have no interest in inhaling more and more carbon
Right.
dioxide
Right.
in each of my breath,
Right.
and so this is really the first I issue that I
Mhm.
can think of that affects every single human.
Yeah.
Because if you breathe, this affects you. There, the CO2 hits equilibrium around the globe in just under a month. So it doesn't
Wow.
matter if it's being injected into the atmosphere in China or coming out of my tailpipe here, right, in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's hitting equilibrium. It's in our atmospheres, it's in our oceans, it's in our sediment. We're breathing it. That doesn't matter what country you live in. It doesn't matter, what your genetics are there. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Every single person is breathing that air.
Right.
And so when we go back to what is meaningful, being able to solve that problem has a positive impact on every single human on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, then
Yeah.
you can even extend that. You're like, and their children, right?
Right.
And the generation after that. And it's like, whoa, if I thought what I was doing in the space industry was meaningful, a lot of people in the medical field feel like what they're doing is extremely meaningful, and it is, right? It absolutely is. But it's like, as our own definitions of what is achievable for us and how much meaning we can bring evolves and matures, right? Manifests.
Right.
It's, yeah, it's like, man, that's something I want to be a part of, right? And so we see all of these Michael Jordans from all of these different industries who've really come together. And I'm so blessed to have, you know, in this organization with me as my partners. And
Mm.
it's just, we've worked so hard to excel in our own, on our own industries or parts of the world or whatever hierarchies we happen to be climbing. And then we're kind of sitting back and saying, if we could apply this to this common vision, imagine the impact that we could have, imagine the meaning. And that's really, I would say, the unifying thread,
Mm-hmm.
between all of us. Because I think you kind of go through the things that are important in your life and they change, right? And sometimes they mature and sometimes they don't,
Yeah. Right.
depends on
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, this is kind of our underlying thread and the impact that we get to make and the thing for us that we wake up in the morning and it makes life worth living,
Yeah.
in a really big way. So
Yeah. Yeah.
makes it.
And I remember in a previous interview that I saw you said something that I'll never forget, and I think everyone just really needs to hear when we talk about meaningful work. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I think I got this mostly accurate here. But you had said if we go to work doing what we don't want to do, we become more skilled in doing the things we don't like, which means
Yes.
we become more qualified to continue being rewarded perpetually for doing more and more of what we never really liked doing in the first place.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and I thought that was beautiful because it's so true and it's yeah, I mean, that should resonate with all of us and something we should all think about when you were mentioning what is meaningful to you, what is meaningful work. Everyone has their own definition, but
Yep.
you gotta listen to what your heart's telling you sometimes, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, what we have, right? We have our effort, we have our energy, right? We have what we can bring forward in this world, right? That's what we have to give.
Yeah.
And that's a limited resource. That
Right.
does not last forever.
Right.
So, if we're taking up a 9 to 5 that we hate,
Mm-hmm.
just think about that. Like, think about the world that we live in where we have normalized the idea of giving like 65 years
Mm-hmm.
of our effort away
Mm-hmm.
for accommodations to live in a home and to
Mm-hmm.
eat food. It's like,
Yeah.
is that worth it?
Yeah.
It is if it's something you freaking love doing. If what you're doing, what you wake up for, is the thing that you would want to be doing anyways, right?
Right. Right.
Otherwise I can't imagine, right? I mean, I think we've all been in roles and been in positions where we took on, the things that we don't like. But I think it's really on us. It really is on us to take a step back and say, okay, I understand this is providing a paycheck, but I'd rather start from scratch in this other arena where I know nothing because I believe in my ability to build my skills up to a point where this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right?
Mm.
I will be able to provide for me, I'll be able to provide for my family in doing something that brings meaning to me, to other people, or whatever it is that is really the fire underneath you, because we got to get away from this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
giving away of your life force thing.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And one of the things that I bring up sometimes, I think I've mentioned it in one of my other podcasts as well, is that um, I think a lot of people overwhelm themselves thinking, I've got to figure it out, I've got to figure it out. And if I don't have something, or if something isn't set up a certain way, then like you said, it can feel overwhelming or insurmountable. But
Mhm.
even looking at what you're doing and starting to figure out how can you take what you're involved in now and kind of take the pieces that you can leverage later. There's got to be something in what you're doing
Yeah.
now that you can, I mean, in your case, obviously, definitely, and being in, in aerospace and then taking some of those technologies. But I think a lot of people overlook what they have the opportunity to participate in every day, or they look at it at what they're doing as something to get done instead of something to be to be realized, or to be to be understood better, or to leverage. So yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, kind of building on that too, it's like who we are as people really is built out of what we spend our time doing,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
we have our 9 to 5, we go to work, we've given our time to somebody else, and then we go home, I'm always interested in knowing what people are doing with those hours
Yeah.
of their day. The question is like, what do you do? And then they talk to you about what they work on. What do you do in the time where you get to pick what you do?
Right.
Like that's what I want to know. And
Yes.
it's really interesting because the the time that we spend building up ourselves or our skills or our interests or whatever it happens to be plays such a large role. I mean, it's everything about who we become and who we are and how we view ourselves, right? It's like, what's the best version of me that I can possibly imagine, right? And it's like, if I just spend 20 minutes a day trying to be a little bit closer to that perfect, the most perfect version of me I can imagine, then we're going in the right direction. I think that in and itself, like, is meaningful, right? We have the meaning side of things, then we kind of have the happiness side of things too. It's like, how do we
Yeah.
stay happy? And
Yeah.
for me, it's like, if you're progressing towards something, if you're getting better at almost anything, you
Yeah.
know, we have that, we have, I think this human desire to continually progress that allows for a lot more happiness. It's like when we get stagnant and then we're in these routines and we think we're doing stuff that we like, but we're really not because we're just dulling our minds instead of sharpening our knives.
Yeah.
And then we get into this place where we look around at our society and it's just such an unhappy society. And it's like, how does this happen? And it's like, well, pretty sure it's from doing a whole bunch of work you don't want to do all day and then not doing any of the stuff that you actually like because you've been convinced that you should spend your time watching a TV show in the evening instead of,
Right.
you know, learning how to do something that does make you happy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so how do we learn all these things and
Yeah.
marry it all together, you know?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, gosh, I mean, we could go on forever. I definitely want to respect your time, but I definitely want to make sure that we let people know. I mean, I live here on the island, so I know that there are opportunities for me to volunteer to get involved with Yame. But what is the best way for people outside of the islands to be able to support the everything that you're involved in?
Awesome. Yeah, we are so highly collaborative. We're all about partnerships, working together, bringing minds together. We're very think tank as so, right, our teams from all around the world, right? So you do not have to physically be on Hawaii Island in order to work with us to any degree. If you are, please reach out. If you're not, please reach out. I'm very available through LinkedIn. So, Curtis, maybe you could share my LinkedIn
Yes.
with folks. Also, we have a website. Come check us out at www.yummet.com, YUMMET.com. There are some forms on there where you can get involved that goes directly, to whether you want to join the team. My big thing is really just spending one-on-one time with folks. So, reach out. I like to get to know people and then figure out how it makes sense to collaborate. How can we bring value to anybody else's life and how can they bring value? And if those two things are synergistic, well, then we have not only a sustainable technology and a sustainable direction, but we have a sustainable relationship. And nothing gets done without sustainable relationships. So it's really about that first. So that's what I'd like to dive into. And I'm open to, exploring that with all people. So that's really the crux of it.
Wonderful. And I'll be sure to share the LinkedIn. You'll be able to find that in the summary of both the podcast and the YouTube video. Also, for LinkedIn, Brittany does some really informative webinars on there and informational. She has a lot of great events that are posted there. So that's a great place to go as well, right? If people want to see
Yes.
what's happening right now, right, at Yummet. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
great. But definitely also check out, yes, the website, YUMMET.com. And tag us on Instagram, everyone. Let us know what you thought about today's show. And Brittany, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you are so busy. You're doing so many wonderful things. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing to follow and to stay as a supporter of Yummet. And I really hope that this message gets out to more people through the program here today. So thank you so much for taking the
Awesome.
time
Thank you
today.
so much, Curtis. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast, and I look forward to spending time with you again on an episode in the near future.